Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for July 5th, 2024. I've had a growing number of questions coming in about the shift from the current unipolar order, the so-called rules-based order, to the emergence of a new multipolar order, or are we actually getting closer to what Helga Zepp-LaRouche has called for, a new security architecture and an economic development architecture? So I'm going to lump all those questions together today for the Friday questions and give you a picture of the end of the empire at a moment where it's not quite clear where the transition is going to go. But that's largely up to us. We, the citizens, have to make that decision and those choices rather than leave it to the corrupt politicians and the political classes, which, as you'll see from the elections underway, there are no alternatives really coming from within the governments that are making these decisions. So let's just start with the political tremors that are rippling through the West. Let's start with the United Kingdom. The long overdue blowout of the Tory party, the Conservative Party in the United Kingdom, happened yesterday. I don't have the final tally, but this is the worst defeat they've had in many, many years, maybe ever. And it reflects the disgust with the Tories, the end of a 14-year rule, the disgust with people such as Boris Johnson and Liz Truss. But it's not because of a great love of Labour or Sir Keir Starmer, but just the attitude, throw the bums out. Now, Starmer himself is very closely tied to the Tony Blair networks, which is not good. And in terms of actual policy, there may not be that great a change. And we'll see. We'll see what comes of this. But in the meantime, the United Kingdom will still be run by the City of London. And the question is, when will the population there reach the point of no return and a full rejection of the political class in the United Kingdom? Now then we have this Sunday what may be very interesting, an election in France. Macron, suffering a huge defeat in the first round, decided to recoup by working a deal with the left parties, the unified left, to try to keep Marine Le Pen and her party out. Whether it works or not, we'll see by Sunday. But what's clear is Macron is an opportunist who's operating, again, on behalf of the global banks and corporations that run the European Union. Macron has gone from saying he would talk to Putin to threatening to send French troops into Ukraine, now saying maybe he'd negotiate with Putin. In the meantime, his main goal is to keep his hands on power. And that's what he's hoping to do with the election on Sunday. Will this be a moment of manipulation of the French voters who have been manipulated before? Or will they rise to the occasion and throw out Macron and his cronies? Whatever occurs, even if he does stop the Le Pen grouping from getting a majority, he'll be significantly weakened. And that's important because if you have a unified series of governments, France, Germany, Italy, and others, committed to the NATO policy of war, there will be a war. So hopefully the French voters will take a step forward against that. Now, I just had the opportunity to be on Iranian television as a commentator on a special they have today because today is the election. They're choosing the successor to President Raisi. What was interesting to me is to watch the footage of people going to the polls. They were calm, they were dignified. You see a nation not so much in crisis, but a nation looking to a future. And what is that future? Well, Iran is hoping to be able to elect a government which can negotiate an end to the sanctions which are crippling the economy. But in case that's not possible, because that depends on what happens from the West, the Iranians are moving into the BRICS alliance. They're one of the new members of the BRICS. They've been very aggressively involved in infrastructure development projects with the Chinese, with other countries, Pakistan, and the coalescence of this Eurasian perspective around Putin, who just at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting last week or this week, reconsolidated the strongest alliance ever between Russia and China. And what's that alliance about? It's about economic development. And if that economic development requires breaking with the dollar system, they're preparing to do it. That's what the BRICS represents. Now, there's a lot of speculation of what does it mean in terms of digital central bank currencies and so on. There's a lot of mythology about digital currencies, and a lot of that has to do with the speculative excesses of Bitcoin. But the reality is they're trying to figure out an alternative to a financial system which is controlled by a handful of private banks, typified by the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve, and have a system which allows for credit, national credit, through also multilateral institutions to go to physical goods production and trade, as opposed to making money on money, speculation. And so we'll see what comes of the Iran elections, but it's a very interesting potential there. Now, finally, let me just talk about the situation in the United States. We're seeing a total effort now to get rid of Biden. Now, some people are saying that they love Joe Biden, but he can't win the election. Others are saying Biden is demented, he has to go. There's a lot of spin, a lot of soap opera, but what's the reality here? Biden has been a failed president, as was his sidekick before that, Barack Obama. And the reason they failed is because they signed on as Democrats to work with the neoconservatives and with the neoliberals to support the idea of the United States as the unipolar, or the sole superpower of the unipolar order. That's what Biden is committed to. And whatever else you will say about Biden, the fact is that his performance in the debate raises the question of whose finger is on the nuclear button, who's making the policy. And as most of you know, our view is that it's a gang of a couple hundred of the billionaire class who are corporate controllers, who are on integrated boards of directors of corporations and trusts and financial institutions, and they control the so-called military-industrial financial complex, which has determined that we're going to remain an empire at war with the rest of the world. That's the long and short of it. And that's what Biden represents. Now, is Trump different? Well, we saw some glimpses in his first term, but we also saw the long arm, you might say, of the permanent bureaucracy controlling policy. What's necessary for every country is to root out a permanent bureaucracy which is there to serve the interests of a special ruling class. Whether it's the British system, the Anglo-American system, the declining system in Germany and France, you do not have a representative government that takes into consideration the interests of the people. So why have elections? Why vote? Well, in fact, that's what the World Economic Forum is talking about. That if you have technocrats making policy, you don't have to worry about swings from the voters to the left or the right. You can impose policy from the top down. That's not the way government should work, especially not the U.S. government, which is under a constitution as a republic, in which ultimately it's the people who are supposed to make the decisions, not special interest groups, not bankers, not pharmaceutical interests or any of these kinds of cartels, but the people. And that's the fight we have to wage, to bring these governments back under the control of the people, the way we're seeing now in the global south, where leaders of sovereign nations are acting in the interests of their people, not the colonial masters who let them stay in office. So this is the global transformation we're seeing take place. Empires usually die badly. They take a lot of the population with them. Will that happen this time? Well, it's clear this empire won't last that much longer. These are slow processes. They take many, many years. But it would help if people became more attuned to the actual realities and the dynamics of governments. And one of the ways to do that is to work with the Schiller Institute. Today we have the weekly Friday Zoom meeting of the Schiller Institute's International Peace Conference Coalition, the IPC. Go to theschillerinstitute.com and sign up for the Zoom call so you can be a part of the creation of a movement that will end wars. And the way we're doing this now is to support an end to the Ukraine war in negotiations centered around the peace proposal made by Russian President Putin. So take that as your task for the weekend. The International Peace Coalition Conference Friday. You find it at theschillerinstitute.com, and I will see you again on Monday.